We are midway through 2025 and I have read 40 books so far, and 20 of them have actually been new releases, books that have come out in 2025. And I've narrowed down my top 10 with one honorable mention because it comes out in October, so I didn't think it counted. But if you've had some new releases on your to-be-read list and you're not sure if you should be moving those over to read them right now, hopefully this list will help you decide. Let's start with our honorable mention, The Resurrectionist by Kathleen S. Allen. I got to read this ahead of time. It doesn't come out until October of 2025. So thank you to NetGalley, the author and the publisher, for sending me a copy of this book. It made the honorable mention list because I gave it 4 stars and a high 4 stars in my opinion. Like I couldn't quite tip it over the edge, but it is a YA gothic horror and it is just so good. It's not a very long book, but it kept me engaged the entire time. There's a ton of horror quotes throughout from like Frankenstein and classic horror tales. The entire premise of this book is that our main character, Dilly, is wanting to become a surgeon. Her dad was a surgeon. He had kind of been thrown out for some of his beliefs that he could resurrect the dead. And Dilly believes that is true. And when she finds a boy who is in medical school that believes that she can do this as well, they set out on a journey that leads them to do some things that they cannot take back and maybe regret even trying to do in the first place. This is not a book with a happily ever after or happy ending, and there's definitely a twist right there at the very end of the book. And while I did see it coming, I still loved how it ended. And with that, let's start our countdown at number 10. At number 10, I have A Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. Now, this was my first Emily Henry book. I actually read it for a local book club, and I feel like I really enjoyed this book. Everything on this list is 4 stars and above, so this was a 4-star read for me. This was also my first Emily Henry experience, and I'm definitely going to read her books again. The one thing that I had a complaint about is that this book did not seem like a romance. I felt like it was more of a literary fiction with a touch of romance because I cared a lot more about that literary fiction type storyline than I did about the romance. So the basis of this book is you have 2 writers who are vying for the opportunity to write the book of the year. And it's going to be like a memoir about this woman from a very well-off family that had a lot of history, and she's going to be telling her story. She's been out of society for years. Nobody's heard of her, and our main character, Alice, has found her. But she's also found another author. His name is Hayden, and Hayden is well known in this space and done some really magnificent work. He's won awards. And Alice, who has done well, but not that well, is also vying for this job. And so it goes back and forth between them getting the story from Margaret, which is the person that they're interviewing, and their romance as they're not talking about what they're doing, but spending time together on this island where Margaret has been hiding. The reason I gave this 4 stars instead of 5 was because of the way it was genred and the fact that I really wanted more of both storylines, but neither one got the attention I feel like it deserved because there were really 2 stories going on in one. But overall, it's a really good book, and I'm definitely not upset that I read it. Moving in to number 9 is another 4-star read, and that is The Strawberry Patch Pancake House. I don't know what it is about the Dream Harbor series, but I am absolutely obsessed. This is the 4th book in the series. It was an insta-buy for me. It was one that I read very shortly after publication because I was just very, very excited to get another one of these couples. I do recommend that you read these in order. While they are from different couples and you could definitely read them as standalones, this book doesn't build the world that is Dream Harbor very well because it assumes that you've read the other 3. And the Pumpkin Spice Cafe is from the perspective of somebody who has not lived in the town. And so you get to learn a lot about the town as she learns about it, versus this book is from the perspective of mostly someone who has lived there. I thought this book was cute. There were some tropes that I did not love, so if you have some that you don't like, maybe check, because this was the first one that I was like, ooh, that's not really my favorite, which is why I gave it 4 stars. But it's a cute and cozy read. It's set in spring around Easter, but you could definitely read it any time of year for some cozy vibes. Switching gears from more contemporary fiction, we're going to go to a paranormal romance with number 8, Enchantra. This is another 4-star read for me, and after Phantasma, I don't know how anything was going to compare. Phantasma was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved the gothic setting, the games that were being played, the dynamic between the main male and female character, and the whole twist at the end. I devoured that book. I just like laid in bed and wanted to read until I finished it. And Enchantra, I still wanted to continue to read. We were on vacation and I stayed up very late to finish this book. I have no regrets for doing that. It was really, really good. I will say I feel like there was more of the world building that had to happen at the beginning to explain why Genevieve, which is the sister that we meet in Phantasma, is even in this situation to begin with. And you had to finagle things to make this work a lot more than you did Phantasma. I feel like there was some build up, but it didn't take as long. But I still really liked this book. Rowan is great. Keeping on those same vibes, we have Rebel Witch. So this is the second book in the Crimson Moth duology, and I loved the first one, which is The Heartless Hunter. I gave this book 4.25 stars, and the reason is it was really good. It picks up just a little bit jump forward, not too much of a jump forward from where we end in The Heartless Hunter, and I think it wraps up the series very well. I do feel like the ending was a bit abrupt for me. If you liked the first one, the second one is great. It does wrap up in a bow, and I just really like books with witches and magic, and this one is one of my favorites. Coming in number 6 was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and that is Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. This is another book that I got an advanced reader copy of. I actually got a physical one. Let me show you real quick. Here it is, right here on my shelf. That top shelf over here, this is like my advanced reader copies with the published edition. So here's my advanced reader copy. This is the actual copy that I read. I had number 1762, and then I bought a signed deluxe edition of the book afterwards. I gave it 4.5 stars. The world building in this book is the main character. The main character herself is not nearly as great as all of the magical creatures that are built within this world. It starts off with a bang. It isn't the fastest paced book. In fact, when it comes to the burn, it was slower than molasses in wintertime, and that is the best way to describe it. When I read it, I was not in the mood to really like dive deep and look at the details, and this is probably one of those books because when I got to the end, I was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And then a lot of other people are like, yeah, I definitely saw that coming. So some people find it predictable. I did not, in the mood that I was in when I was reading it. But if you are a fan of magical creatures, this is the book for you. There's tons of world building surrounding the magical creatures. The magical creatures are the basis of the plot. It does leave off in a cliffhanger, and the second book, there is not an announced date yet, which is so disappointing because I'm very excited for it to come out. I mean, it was a very beautiful deluxe edition, so I couldn't help myself getting another copy of it, so I have two. Shout out to Red Tower Books and Devney Perry for sending me a copy. I absolutely loved it. It's one of those that my best friend read it first, and then I just had to like Snapchat her every time I was getting to a new part or learn something new because she was like, you have to give me your reactions to see if they're the same as mine. That's how you know it's a really good book. Now, everything else you're going to see is my 5-star reads. These are what I consider the cream of the crop, the best of the best, my favorites of the year so far. And we're going to start with number 5, Not Safe for Work by Nisha Tuli. Contemporary romances don't typically get 5 stars from me because they just are kind of predictable. You know they're going to have a little bit of a happily ever after. They don't usually have that deep of a plot. And while the plot is not that deep in this book, the topics that are in there I feel like are very timely and they mean a lot. So we follow Triss, who is an engineer. She had these great plans of breaking through the glass ceiling in the corporate world that is engineering, and that's not happened for her. In fact, she's in the same spot that she was when she began. And so she actually gets the opportunity to go on this corporate retreat where she has the opportunity to like get this leadership position afterwards, to learn how to be like on the executive team maybe one day and to be around all the executives for this corporation. And all of that sounds great. It's in Hawaii. She's getting a trip. She's getting a chance to advance her career, but she has to go with Rafe, who is the boss's son, her work nemesis, and the guy she has a crush on. And due to a scheduling error, Triss and Rafe end up having to share the honeymoon suite in Hawaii. Oh darn. There's only one bed in there. I neglected laundry that needed to be done for like 2 days because I wanted to finish this book. It was my favorite contemporary romance of the year. Highly recommend it. Book number 4, I don't have a physical copy of because I listened to it on audiobook, and that is Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. John Green is one of my favorite authors. I loved The Fault in Your Stars, Paper Towns, Looking for Alaska, etc., etc. John Green is awesome. I am a proud member of Nerdfighteria. If you don't know what that is, go to YouTube, look it up. You won't regret it. I watch a Vlogbrothers video at least once a week, usually 2 or 3 of them, because they have such intriguing titles and I can't help but click on them and learn something from John and Hank. Which is why Everything is Tuberculosis had been on my TBR for a very long time, because I had learned everything I pretty much knew about tuberculosis other than the fact that I had to get TB tested every year as a healthcare professional from John Green, which is pretty sad considering TB is the world's deadliest disease. I went through pharmacy school with very little knowledge of TB. I had heard about how you treat it in the United States. We, of course, discussed the antibiotics associated with it, but that was like it. And for the fact that it is that important of a disease and really impacted so much of modern society, like it is absolutely insane how many things can be related back to TB. This should be something that anybody who's in healthcare or just as a human should read and learn about. And if you like audiobooks, it is actually read by John Green, and he has like the perfect voice for sharing this story and so much passion about the story he's telling, because not only is he telling the history of TB, but he's doing so in the context of somebody who has TB that he had worked with and had been impacted by. His name is Henry, and we got to hear Henry's story as it related back to the history of TB and how that was impacting him in modern times. It deserved every one of those 5 stars. As did the next book that I also don't have currently with me because somebody else is borrowing it, because I have been trying to get anybody who will read this book to read this book, and that is A Language of Dragons. This book is by S.F. Williamson, and it was the cure for my Onyx Storm hangover. If you like dragons, this book is really focused in on the dragon lore. Viv is our main character, and she is in London in the 1920s, and there's a revolution happening. And while it seems like it's in the distance, she finds her family swept up in it and herself when she ends up breaking a treaty between dragons and humans, and her punishment is to do this internship of sorts where she's learning about dragons. But not just anything about dragons, the language of dragons and how dragons communicate. And I have not read a book with this great of lore probably ever when it comes to dragons and communication, and you can definitely tell that the author has a great understanding of languages and puts that to use when she is creating how language works in a dragon-filled world. The descriptions of the places and the descriptions of the dragons and how they communicate, I was so immersed in the world reading this book. It's another one that I did not want to put down. I finished it and I was like, oh my gosh, I need more. And we will be getting more. In January of 2026, there is another book coming. I'm so excited for it. There was a cliffhanger, some question marks at the end. And again, if you like dragons, you like historical fantasy, there is a little bit of romance in here, but just like the perfect amount. It's YA, but it's still mostly focused on the dragons, which I love. Now for number 2. My top 2 favorite reads in this stack are my top 2 most anticipated reads for the first half of the year, which in theory means it met my expectations, but it definitely did not meet everyone's, and they are popular reads. And so the book that comes in number 2 for me at 5 stars is Sunrise on the Reaping. I don't remember exactly when this book was announced, but from the day it was announced, I have been waiting for this book to come out. Haymitch's story has intrigued me since I read his story from Katniss's point of view in The Hunger Games, or maybe it was more in Catching Fire we learned about it. I don't remember exactly which book it was, but Haymitch has always really intrigued me. Even before watching the movies, he was one of my favorite characters, and I think Woody Harrelson did a great job of playing him and portraying the essence of Haymitch at that point in his life. Which brings you to, how did Haymitch actually become Haymitch? He always wasn't the cranky drunk. He obviously cared about Katniss. There was things that he said to Katniss that relate back in this book, and oh my gosh, the tears at the end as I was reading the epilogue broke my heart. This book is fantastic. If you are a fan of The Hunger Games, there are some people who think that it is fan service. We're following Haymitch's games. There's a lot of characters that come up in Katniss's story that relate back here. But I think what I personally liked about that is it really does follow what we learn about from Katniss's perspective. There's not that many people in the world that is Pan is a lot smaller when you narrow it down to the people who have been involved in the games. And I think that was portrayed well. I think there was a good view of the progression of Snow into who he is when we reach him in the Hunger Games book, the book Hunger Games. And I didn't want to put this one down either. I really liked how the arena was set up, the things that happened, the brutality of the Capitol coming out yet again. Suzanne Collins made very strong statements about propaganda in this book. She does not write without having something to say, and she definitely said it. So if you're a fan of the Hunger Games and you did not like Ballad of Songbirds and Stakes, please give Sunrise on the Reaping a try. Haymitch is a much more likable main character than Snow was. Snow was not intended to be a good character. Haymitch is, and this book was. It was great. I loved it. 5 stars. And last, but certainly not least, was my most anticipated read of the entire year, and that is Onyx Storm. Again, this is one that has a lot of controversy, so if you didn't love it, I get it. The thing about the evolution of the Empyrean series is we started with Fourth Wing that was very much an intro to fantasy. It was a romantasy book at heart. It was really focused mostly on the relationship between Violet and Xaden, and while we were getting some world building, we were in the academia setting. She was learning all about the world and everything that was happening, and it was a much easier read to digest. In Iron Flame, we started to transition away from that, and we started to do more heavier lore and more world building. And honestly, the pacing of that book wasn't great. It was originally intended to be 2 books, and you could tell that part 1 versus part 2, very odd feel, without giving too much away. We get the cliffhanger at the end, and bam, we are in book 3, and we do not miss a beat. This picks up right where Iron Flame leaves off, and with an absolute bang. There were so many theories and things that I was hoping we would get in this book, and we got so many of them, and then a lot more questions that need to be answered. I loved the places that our characters go in this book. I liked the crew of characters that went there. I'm trying to keep things vague for people who maybe haven't read Fourth Wing or Iron Flame. And I really liked the dynamic between our 2 main characters a lot more in this book than I did in Iron Flame. I took off work for 2 days to read this. No regrets. I loved it. 5 stars. It may be my favorite book of the series because of how much world building happened and the way it was written, especially at the end where we're bouncing between perspectives of different characters, which is something that had not happened in the previous books. And the ending. Oh my gosh, the ending. I was not okay for days after that. Still not okay. And I gave it 5 stars anyway. So there you have it. That is my list of my top 10 2025 releases so far this year. But I know that I haven't read everything that is great that has come out. So if I missed a book that you think I should have read and added to this list, leave it down in the comments below. I can't wait to read all of them to figure out what I need to add to my TBR or move up on my TBR if it's already there. And I can't wait for some of the big releases that are happening in the second half of the year. I don't know what's happening in September, but my best friend and I have made a list of like over 30 new releases that are on our radar in September. So that month is going to be insane. And that includes the re-releases with the sprayed edges for Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. And my top read going into that second half of the year is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. I'm so excited for that one. 3 Shattered Souls. That is the 3rd book in the Broken Blade series. And Accomplice to the Villain, I cannot wait for. And there's so many others. Those are the top 3 that I'm like thinking about right now, but I know there are so many more that I'm missing. And in a few months, we'll do this again and we'll see what got moved off the list for something new. And I know you don't want to miss that, so make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!